Welcome everybody to Live Sail Die's Day 3 coverage, proudly brought to you by B&G and PredictWind. And today again I've got Andrew Brown to my far right and a very special guest this morning, Leslie Egnot, 1992 Olympic silver medalist in the 470 women's class, America's Cup Helms woman, mother of a very famous young sailor as well at the moment. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
So yesterday, I guess it sounds a little bit like Groundhog Day, but a tough day for the Kiwi sailors again yesterday. Really tricky conditions out off Sagami Bay. Let's start with the laser class. Leslie, you've been, I know you've been watching this quite avidly with the coverage. Yesterday we didn't see a lot of the laser racing at all on TV, but poor old Sam Meach looks like he's put himself in a pretty tough position now.
Yes, the laser class has had 6 races now, and they have a total of 10 before they go through to the final, so they're more than halfway through the regatta, and unfortunately Sam just hasn't fired. He's really struggled with the wind shifts out there. The wind has been offshore, so really changeable and coming from one side to another, and he's admitted he's had trouble nailing it.
Really impressive performance so far by Pavlos Kontitis from Cyprus.
He is amazing. 31 years old, and he won his first medal in 2012 in London, and that actually was the first medal that Cyprus has ever won at the Olympics. Incredible,
isn't it?
Yeah, amazing. And he's had a great regatta. He's lying first overall, and he's got quite a jump on the rest of the contenders ahead of Matthew Wern from Australia, who has clawed his way back up through the fleet.
Yeah, he's one we mentioned earlier on who was sort of back with Sam after that first day and was looked to be struggling a bit as well, and we know him and Sam have been training partners, but obviously something's clicked right for him, because he had a real solid day with a couple of seconds and a fourth yesterday to move right up there into contention.
Yes, he sailed really well, and another one to come through the fleet is the famous Robert Scheidt from Brazil. Incredible, 48 years old, and he's managed to hang in there with these young sailors, hiking really hard, and he's worked his way up to 3rd overall.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing, a little bit, the offshore super shifty, tough conditions probably suits Robert, their experience. Certainly the Olympics is not going to faze him. He's been to about 15 of them, being that old. Yeah, really, really cool. Finn fleet, so poor old Josh Jr., again a tough start, 12 and a 10 Brownie, day 1. He obviously wouldn't be happy with that.
No, it was actually quite disappointing to see, because he was putting together such a good race on the first beat of the first race, hanging in there with the top guys and coming across onto port towards the top mark, and didn't see the Japanese guy who got quite a big lift on starboard and a wee port starboard and a sorry mate, and started doing his turns and couldn't come back after that.
Yeah, I must say it seemed like a bit of a brain fade, really, didn't it? It wasn't exactly wasn't a should I cross, shouldn't I cross. It was pretty clear, I'm going to hit your midships, and just sort of wasn't, I guess, being so shifty, it was getting really light at the top mark there, very heads out of the boat stuff, and he must have just, for some reason not seen him coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I can put it down to too. I can't think of any other excuse at all, I just think he just missed him.
And I guess what's really interesting in the Finn fleet, which has been a bit different than the other fleets so far, is the top 3, Leslie, were top 3 in both races.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. The boat from Turkey, he sailed really well. He's won both races yesterday in those tricky conditions, and he wasn't leading at the top mark each time. He had to work his way through the fleet. So that's Alakan Kainar, I think that's how you pronounce it. And then the sailor from Hungary, Zomber Berez, is that how you say it? Beresic, sorry, from Hungary. 2 seconds, and the Spanish sailor had 3/3. Now this guy's amazing. He's the youngest sailor in the fleet, and he sailed so consistently to have 2/3 in those conditions.
Yeah, no, he's the one we talked about earlier on in the week, who is definitely the young up and comer in the well, you say up-and-comer, he got second at the last Gold Cup, but he's the young fella of the fleet. And an interesting fact on him, he is the current e-sailing world champion. So he, he's quite diverse in his yacht racing.
Obviously got really good reactions.
Yeah, exactly. And, I guess we'll quickly touch on that one, on the Finn class there, Brownie, is Giles Scott struggling back down to 9th of 2 9th places. So it obviously wasn't an easy day for the, there's a lot of stars down the fleet right down there through to Josh.
Yeah, there is. And as you bring up on our first video, that the British have won every medal in the Finn since 2000. This is the last Finn regatta for the Olympics. It's been booted out, so there's nowhere for these heavyweight male sailors to go now for their Finn careers or their Olympic careers. And it looks like Giles is really struggling, but let's see today in a bit more breeze and an onshore breeze.
Yeah, great. Now, we had a couple of new New Zealand teams out there racing for the first time yesterday. With the 49er FXs with Molly Meach and Alex Maloney. And wow, it was such a promising start. First to the top mark in the first race. We're like, okay, here we go. They're into it. It was a real shifty, puffy breeze filling in pretty solid round that first lap. They were still in the hunt there, sort of in that third, fourth, a few place changes, and then it all went horribly wrong down at that bottom mark. Leslie?
Yes, Molly and Alex will be gutted with that. They were right up in contention to have a great result. In fact, they were leading at the top mark, and they did a jibe that looked perhaps a bit rushed and in a big puff, and they came up pretty hot and unfortunately ended up capsizing, and they ended up towards the back end of the fleet, so they'll be gutted with that.
Yeah, and then you think, okay, it's only one race, here we go, back into it. They were still right up there to that point, and then the next start, they just got, their timing wrong completely. And it's one of those ones where you obviously sitting watching, and I'm sure that the coach sitting back too would have been wondering what was going on. Nobody knew what was happening. They just started all by themselves a couple of lengths early, and that's a U flag OCS.
It looks like a simple miscommunication within the boat.
Yeah.
That happened. But look, these girls, they're very experienced campaigners. They're silver medalists from the last Olympics. They'll know what to do now. They'll know to just forget about those races. And in fact, they did. In the next race, they came through and got 5th. So they know just to wipe the heads clear of the mistakes and just focus on the job at hand.
I guess when we go back to all the way back to 1992, Leslie, you started your Olympic with an OCS.
Ouch, we did.
That is just a mindset to just try and, I guess, using a rugby terminology from Steve Hansen, flush the toilet, move on and just looking ahead.
Exactly. You've just got to take one race at a time, and you do know that you can't afford to take major risks or make any major mistakes because you've already got your drop race.
Yep.
But nothing else changes. You just sail the way that you've practiced.
And I guess one thing, Brownie, they've got one of New Zealand's best ever Olympic coaches in their team with Nathan Hanley, who was the coach of Joe Allais and Polly Powery in London and Rio, and that was, an incredible comeback from those girls in Rio from a really tough start with an OCS and a DSQ in there to get themselves back up into the silver medal. So they've got someone in their corner who's experienced in that and will know exactly how to deal with it.
Oh, exactly. Old Handles is the guy you want in your corner. He's solid. He's tough. He's been through it all before. What himself, Joe and Polly did the last Olympics was amazing, and I wouldn't write off Molly or Alex just yet. It's just been the first day. They're very fast. They've got great experience behind them. They're experienced themselves, and let's see how today goes for them.
Yeah, I think there were plenty positives out of their day. Obviously, leading to the top mark, they were in that top group, looking for a solid race. The race that they were over, yes, they're over, but they cleared away and won that race solidly. 5th in the next race, so they'll be confident they know what they're doing. Talking about speed though, there was an impressive performance by the English girls in those first 2 races, especially when the breeze was up. They looked incredibly quick.
The British just thrived in those conditions. They weren't at first at the top mark each time, but they managed to claw their way through the fleet, and the first 2 races they finished with 1st place, and then the last race they finished 6th, which is currently their drop race, but I'm sure that will be a keeper further down the track. So that's a great result by them. And then the USA boat did really well in those conditions as well. So they're lying second. And then third, the gold medalists from last year from Brazil, they started off a bit rusty in the first race, but they've come through and they're not too far off the pace at all, so they're lying third overall.
No, I think the Brazilians, I think that for me that was almost I wrote next to them, watch out for them, because they had in their minds, I bet you that was a pretty bad day for them yesterday. You know, they were right up there at the top of the first race, dropped in the jibe set at the top mark, dropped their spinnaker sheet over the bow, went from top to 15th, I think it was, down the last run. Looked like they were having a little bit of Latino flair coming out there at the finish, having a little yelling match at each other. Then got a penalty at the start of the second race, battled back impressively to get a fifth, and then won the last race. So I'd be watching out for them for sure.
Definitely, they'll be ones to watch.
And then our last Kiwis in action yesterday with our, I guess, everyone's favourites here in New Zealand at the moment, Peter Burling and Blair Tuke. Only one race in the 49er fleet. They got a tough start and just couldn't quite get back into it in those light, shifty conditions.
No, it's quite amazing with the South Africans, young guys. They say that their ultimate sailing heroes is Peter Burling, and they didn't give Pete or Blair any room on the start, held them out, and actually did a really good job for themselves. Being Kiwi blooded and a Kiwi heart, a bit hard to watch, and the boys still battled back okay and finished with a 12th. Long day for them. They had an abandoned race before that where they were performing quite well, as was Leonard Takahashi Fry and Ibu from Japan. They rounded the top mark in first just before it got abandoned. But yeah, there's plenty more racing today, and for today, with the PredictWind weather, it's looking like it's going to be quite strong onshores today. All the models are lining up again, starting off at midday at about 12-14 knots, and then it's going to build to 18 to 20 knots. But also the swells are going to get impressive today. Big waves, big onshore breeze. It is a gradient, so there will be a few little shifts, nothing like yesterday, but it'll be all about boat speed, keeping the mast pointing into the sky and sending it today.
And these are the conditions that the teams have been training for, right? They've been, I know the New Zealand team spent a lot of time up the coast there at Tutakaka trying to get into the big swell and the onshore breeze. So this will be hopefully suit our team today.
Yes, I think they'll really be looking forward to having more steady conditions out there today. They have been spending a lot of time at Tutakaka in those big waves with training groups here. It's been great that they've brought younger sailors along to start building the next wave coming through at Tutakaka. So it's actually worked quite well. Yeah.
And I guess obviously we had the laser radial fleet yesterday that we don't have any Kiwis in, but they were out there racing in another couple of races, and the young Danish girl Anne-Marie Rindholm has consolidated her lead. She's got a 12-point lead now, back to second and third over the Swede and the Dutch. But an interesting one there is Marit Bouwmeister, who we've talked about in the past. Had a tough first day with a 21 and a 14, but she's worked her way right up there into bronze medal position now. And I think if there's a bit more breezy stuff coming up, they've got a day off today, but the rest of the week looks like it's going to be a pretty nice breeze. I think she's going to be a tough one for them to hold back.
I think so, because right now the points are very close between second and sixth at least. But I think we'll see her work her way up through the fleet with her experience and her physicality, the way she sails the boat. It's quite spectacular. Yeah,
and interesting to see the Scandinavians up there in the laser radial fleet. Scandinavia seems to be dominating for whatever reason, Brownie.
Scandinavia, Northern Europe, maybe just with the year off. I think they've been spending a lot of time in Southern Europe, all training together. So yeah, it's quite amazing to see.
And so, Brownie, you've talked a bit about the wind and stuff today. What from the coaching and the analysis that the teams do and so forth. What are the tools that they can use out there or pre-racing and onshore to help them?
Yeah, so going back and putting my coach hat on, these Olympics are a bit different for the coaches. You have to sit back in what's called the starting box, which is behind the start line. You can't move around the course. But the other thing that's been used for the last 4 or 5 years building up to this is what's called wind gear, which is with wind masts and recording stuff, just to record the breeze, to record the averages. Again, at the Olympics you're not allowed to use it, but our friends at B&G have been working really strongly with the Australian sailing team, and there's many different models out there, but the B&G wind gear seems to be really good, and it's a coaching tool that you can really use and get really good analysis with the breeze and help the sailors when they think that the left may have been favoured, but you can actually prove to them that, hey, it was actually the right. So yeah, that's where our friends at B&G really come into play with the Olympic sailing.
Right, okay, so obviously after day 3 we never thought we'd be sitting here saying that the New Zealand placings were 12, 13, 14 and 15. Plenty of room for improvement, but we're expecting some big things to move up. Today we've got, the laser fleet have a day off, so Sam Beach can clear his head a bit, I guess, and carry on, but we've got the Finns and the 49er FX and the 49ers out there again, and we've got 2 other teams out there today. For the first time we've got our 470 men, Leslie, Paul Snow-Hansen and Dan Wilcox, and we've got the NACRA with Mika Wilkinson and Erica Dawson, so we'll be looking forward to them starting in that big swell offshore breeze. Perfect conditions for them, I reckon.
It's going to be quite exciting having the final 2 classes from New Zealand competing. They'll be itching. They'll be dying to get out there after having watched everyone else sail.
Yeah, exactly.
And Paul and Dan, they're the current European champions, so they've had a good lead up coming to these Olympics, so expect some good things from them. And Micah and Erica, I think they've done well just to get to the start line, really, and good on them, and wish them the best of luck. A lot of you might not know that Erica broke her leg about 5 weeks ago, the bone in her leg, and she's been recovering, and they've made it to the start line, and are going to be competing, so that's just fantastic.
Okay, so we are really looking forward to bringing you the review of today's racing tomorrow. Day 4, it's going to be some good onshore breezy action with a couple of new Kiwi teams. Thanks again to B&G and PredictWind for helping bring this to you. See you all tomorrow.